think I'll start, and people are welcome to join us as and when they can. I would like to welcome everyone to the session, and in particular our guest today, Frances Mitchell. This session is on behalf of the RAM in Dublin, and as part of the News and project. And I'll tell you, I know Frances is going to introduce herself. So she is currently the Director of Business Development for Dublin, Ireland's leading product design and innovation consultancy. I know Frances though as a musician, and she worked a lot with musicians in the past. So Frances, what I will do is I'll just hand it over to you, because I know as part of your session you are going to introduce yourself also. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Sorry Frances, one thing, can I ask everyone to mute and cameras on please, so we can all feel like we're connected to the session. After Paul's session earlier, I think we all agree that cameras on are good, listening ears on, and yes, so thanks Frances.
Cool. Thanks very much. I'm looking forward to this session. I'm very aware that it is the last session of the week, so I'm sure some of you we can't see but are being propped up by sticks to keep you awake after, I'm sure, a very busy week of online sessions. I will launch into my presentation. I have a habit of sometimes speaking too fast. So please, if you find that I'm speaking too fast, just put it in the chats, and then I can have Vorneen jump in and say, Frances, slow down. So I will do my best to not speak fast, but sometimes I get enthusiastic and then I move a bit fast. But okay, this is my presentation. Today I'm going to talk all about people, but first I'll introduce myself. Can everyone see that full screen? Yes? Yeah, cool. So this is me. As Vernon said, I was going to introduce myself. So I have a mixed background. I studied mechanical engineering in UCD in Dublin back in the day, but I always had a thing about music as well. I've always been into music, but wasn't sure how I would develop my career as a musician or anything like that. So I also liked maths, so I went for engineering. Ended up working for Procter & Gamble in the north of France in a big dirty factory making Ariel liquid and Lenore for a couple of years. But realized it just wasn't for me and I needed to give music a go. So I did a master's in music and media technologies in Trinity College in Dublin. And this was an amazing experience for me, just to understand where music was at, where modern music was at, where the opportunities might lie. So there I had a very rich time where I was performing in experimental operas. I even got to go on a German tour with Moya Brennan from Clannad, so a bit of Celtic mysticism in my background of playing keyboards. But played in punk rock bands, played in folk country rock bands. And I guess it was hard to, I knew I wanted to work in music. I knew I was very good at producing actually at the end, but the music industry can be hard to get into. So I ended up working in event management for a while in a company called Catapult. But at the same time, I was doing freelance production for an ensemble called Crash Ensemble. So Crash Ensemble are a modern classical music ensemble based out of Dublin. It's an ensemble of a choral ensemble of about 10 musicians with classical instruments as well as electronics, percussion, electric guitars, and they perform music by composers who are all still alive. So modern music. And excuse me, when I cough. I was singing earlier to kind of, be good with my voice, and then I ended up giving myself a cough. So sorry about that. But Crash Ensemble, if you don't know them, are an amazing ensemble. So this is just a snapshot of some of my time with Crash. We toured the world, we recorded albums, film soundtracks, much collaboration with different art forms. It was a really amazing time. But it was right across the recession as well. So I started there about 2006, 2007. And then the recession hit. So we were primarily funded by the state. So it was a very challenging time. So we were doing well, but I also knew that I needed to try and figure out sources of funding. So I did a part-time MBA in DCU to kind of understand business and understand the language of business and the needs of business, and to see if there was any way I could convince business to give money to Crash, basically, because I needed sources of funding. I needed to augment where the funding was coming from. And this is how I approached it. Always challenging because, big concert halls can get sponsorship from business so they can bring their clients to concerts of Beethoven symphonies, but not many companies were interested in bringing their clients to concerts of, Stockhausen or, Steve Reich or something like that. So it was a bit of a challenge. And in doing that, and I guess also I was pushing really hard. I actually burnt out a bit on the music industry. It was very tough in my final year with Crash Ensemble in terms of lots of natural disasters actually getting in my way. So I knew I needed to move on. So I stayed on the board of Crash Ensemble, but I moved on to a program in UCD called the Innovation Academy, where I was teaching PhDs of mixed disciplines how to be more creative and innovative with their work. So the effort was across 3 universities in Ireland, UCD, Trinity and Queen's. And the aim was to try and get different discipline PhDs working together. The hope was that the PhD researchers would come up with ways of capitalizing on their research and create companies and create jobs. So that was the ultimate aim. But for me, it was also about understanding creativity a bit deeper. This is a book that I found really useful at the time, a great book on creativity in itself. But I also knew I was missing my technical side. I knew academia wasn't actually where I wanted to stay. It was more of a pause. So I was thinking about who am I? I'm very much a creative person, but I'm also a technical person. So where does that make sense? And I guess I landed on design, as I would have seen it as creative, much more closer to industry. And I knew it was creative and technical. I liked the physical side of it, but it was hard to get into. I didn't want to become a designer. And then I was just lucky that I found Dolman at the time when they were looking for a business development manager, and the rest is history. So I've been working there for nearly 6 years now. But today's session is all about people. So the background of myself was just to give you a bit of context on who I am and kind of what I think my worldview is. But I think core to everything that I do, essentially in my role right now, I'm a salesperson. That's the biggest part of what I do. And I'm selling a concept and a service that is creativity and design that delivers value to business. It's quite hard to quantify, but it's in the wide range of creative stuff, it's easier to quantify than a lot of other things in terms of impact and value. So, but still the people relationships matter. And for me, the people side of things is the most important side of things. So the kind of stuff I'm just gonna go through today is, talking about what kind of person you are, who do you know, hugely important, who do you like and who do you admire, talk a bit about networking, it's not a dirty word, presenting yourself in the big bad world, especially about online, and then thinking about your audience and research. So they're the kind of themes that I'm going to look at today. Hopefully you'll find it useful. This slide I put up because it matters who you are, and it's not about making you someone you're not. It's I guess a little bit philosophical, but it's also good to write down, who you are, and think about how the purpose of writing down some sort of work in this area is to help frame where you want to go with your career and allow you to focus. So companies do it when they build a strategy. They do a mission and vision and values statement. And it's worth giving it a go as a tool to try and think about these things. If you can define these things about yourself professionally, it'll make decision-making much easier and much more focused. So if we want to look at mission, vision, and values, these are, the mission is essentially what it is that you want to be doing, your audiences and your differential. The vision, it's more aspirational. There's always a bit of a debate as to whether a mission or a vision should come first, but the vision, it's more aspirational. Where am I in 5, 10, 15 years, and you want to think big. And your values is the core of who you are. Think about words that describe you and what makes sense for you and try and put it all in a sentence. So again, this is all about making sense to you. I don't want to turn you all into business people. I'm just trying to show you useful tools and thinking that might help prompt you to think slightly differently about how you might present yourselves or interact with people. So that's all I'm trying to do today. You can feel free to throw all of this out in the bin as well. If it doesn't relate to you, that's okay. It's just a way of thinking and some ideas and things that I think are useful. Focus and communication. So yeah, again, I think the point around this, especially now that everything is moved online and everyone gets Zoom fatigue, you do need to be focused in your communications. You need to be getting to the point sooner, and you want to be scheduling 20-minute calls on Zoom as opposed to hour-long calls on Zoom. You want to try and condense it down because people are time poor now and you want to give value. So then you have to think about, well, what is the essence of what I'm trying to do? But it's also about allowing you to focus on what you want to do as well. So having the ability to say no, because it doesn't align to what you're trying to achieve. And you see that in business as well. You know, I'm turning away business from my company because it doesn't align to our strategy. And, you know, it was very hard in the first instance for the company to see that as an approach, because you don't want to say no to business because it's revenue, it's money in your bag. But when you, like, we were luckily at a point where we're doing okay. And I'm like, but we can't, we're still small as a business. We can't be wasting our time on these things here. They actually are bad customers that take a lot of our time. Whereas if we just focus a bit more time on winning the bigger wins, where we know we can do that and we give the resources to it, it's better. So, you know, having these structures, these things written down allows you to have a framework there, which allows you to say, well, actually, no to that. It looks amazing, but no, I need to say no. And that's something for me too, as well, because I know what my focus should be. And I get asked lots of different things all the time. And I need to say no a lot more as well. But I do mostly now. I mostly say no when I know I can't do something, but it's a useful tool to be able to do. And this is something as well, a friend of mine who's a great musician and educator as well at third level, professional performer. And she had a real strong vision of where she wanted to go with her career. So she wanted to focus her performance on 2 specific genres. And she was like, I'm going to go with this, Frances. This is my focus. I'm going to make this work, which is brilliant. You know, she had that focus and she had that drive, but she gave it for a few years. And then just one side of it was not working for her. It wasn't delivering to her career in the way that she wanted it to. She wasn't getting the gigs. There just wasn't enough potential for her career that she thought there should have been or could have been. So it's a hard thing to admit, but it's also something you should be open to admitting to yourself, that your original plan is not working out. And so you, like in business, they call it pivoting, which is, you know, business is full of rubbish words, by the way. They just come out with words all the time. It's kind of a load of rubbish. All you need to do is be common sense about it. This is not working. You need to stop and reassess. And it takes bravery to get to that point of going, this is not working. But she did it. She said, it's not working. I'm going to try something else. And there's such strength in being able to do that and go, okay, let's move on. So she just said no to that. Even though she had a certain amount of it still going on, she was like, well, okay, if I've absolutely nothing, I'll do it, but my focus needs to be elsewhere so I can grow my career. A few things that I literally came across yesterday evening at a meeting was something, a person called Barbara Minto. And this is, again, we're talking about communication and communication of concepts and ideas. She is really important in the history of McKinsey, so one of those evil consulting companies. But she worked there for 10 years and revolutionized how they communicate what they're trying to do from reports and kind of dense information and research. So I guess there's probably a lot of you doing a certain amount of that. And it's just interesting that she has this pyramidal approach to how to communicate effectively, because, you know, the consultants we're working with, he actually met her and he was like, I've done this report. I'm so proud of it. It's really good. It's going to blow people away. And he was like, so what did you think of it? And she went, it was really boring and hard to read. I only read it because I felt like I should, because I knew I was going to be talking to you. But really, it was very boring. And he was gutted, you know, because he had years of experience. But she was like, no, like, where's the point, you know, where is the grabber, you know, and everything falls. It's a quite simple approach, but it is a useful approach in terms of, again, getting to the point. And this is something that we're just going to have to look at more. I mean, you do the research, you get the dense material, but condense it down and make it into digestible chunks that people can understand, because people have short attention spans and an inability to read dense tracts. So you need to break it out and say, what do you really need to learn from this? Another company that came up is a company called Duarte, which is a company in California. So just they specialize in PowerPoint presentations, but again, it's all around visual. And the reason that came up is because I was talking to the consultant about how we present ourselves as a company. So you can see my Dahlman presentation now, yeah? So I'm just shifting it. I'm not going to pull it up full screen. It's just to show you where we've constructed our own way of talking about ourselves, just to give an example of it. So we have a messaging hierarchy, you know, get to the point at the top, and then there's, you know, 3 key differentials, and then we can get into storytelling. So when I talk to people, it's all about making ideas work. So that's literally what we do. We make ideas work. People come with a concept, we turn it into reality. That's what we do. And we've been doing it for a long time. But there's 3 things that, you know, make us stand out. We work across different industries. So we work in industrial, medical, and consumer. We are a creative and technical team, which is quite unique. You know, it's not just that there's a bunch of creatives over here and a bunch of technicals over here. It's a very unique profile of person that we hire, and we work very specifically with R&D and marketing. And that this is actually our value statement. And it started with creative, passionate, flexible, integrity, and experience. And we made it into a sentence. But again, you know, it speaks to who we are, and it's very much who we are as a company. I think a lot of us would not want to be very corporate about these things, and sometimes you're like, you come across these things and they have these statements and it doesn't make any sense in the reality, but this really does matter to us. But the final thing, you know, experience and expertise. I've been doing this for a long time. We work with really good people, and then we tell some stories. You know, we talk about our process as well, but we tell stories, and stories are so powerful. And I know you've already spoken about storytelling, and from a business perspective, I'm trying to convey authority and develop trust, because these people are going to spend a lot of money with us if it's a complex product that they want to bring to market. So they have to trust us. So we bring out good stories of how, you know, we've designed ventilators and respiratory healthcare devices for over 20 years, and we've worked with lots of different companies in those areas. And one of them is still the gold standard in hospitals. You know, we've got insights into products that has transformed businesses and transformed the lives of people as you do surgical interventions. So you're always like, for me, I'm looking for ways of quantifying that impact. We design beer taps. So we fixed up in hospital, but it's probably because we got you drunk in the pub. But we also, so we design beer and alcohol dispense systems as well. But, you know, we standardized how beer is delivered for Diageo across the world. We've won awards for being commercially viable in all sorts of different ways. So there's all sorts of ways of doing it, but you can see how we're trying to be condensed and focused in how we're communicating this information. That is, and it all still is coming back to people, because people need to understand better and can't wade through information. Then it's down to, when you're thinking about your career, who do you know? And normally when I've spoken about this before, it was kind of early mid-stage people, but it matters who you know. And you'd know, I think, I'd say most of you are very experienced people. You know, but people are actually very helpful if you ask them for help. You know, who do you know? Have a think about yourself. Where am I lacking? Where could I do with a bit of support? Who do I know who's really good at that? Can I talk to them? And if I don't know them that well, but I kind of know them, or I know them because I know this person who knows them, could I get an introduction just to have a half-hour chat? And you'd be surprised how generous people will be. But when you get to the point of what you're looking for, so be very precise on what you want from this interaction with this person, and throw in a load of flattery. So I put in the word plomosing there because it's a great Irish word, but essentially it means flattery. So you're like, you are clearly amazing at this. I've seen your work. I love how you do it. I just love all of this. And I would really appreciate 20 minutes of your time just to have a chat online about how you do that and how you might maybe give me some pointers. And it's just a really fast way of kind of, you know, getting to the point, who's good at this and can they give you advice, instead of like wading through lots of papers on this, that and the other. You know, so leverage networks as well. These are Irish networks, but leverage the networks that you know. And then in terms of examples of, you know, who do good communications about themselves, because you also need to be talking about yourself and be present online in the work that you do. So there's a few Irish people here that I know well, like Francesco Teresi. I'm assuming you can see my screen and you can see me going to Facebook. Yeah. So like he's posting all the time. He's a prolific poster and he always has been, but it's very good because it keeps people engaged when they're on the platforms. Linda Buckley is a composer, always has her work being performed. So she always has lots to say, but you know, it's alive. Dan Jacobson did something very interesting. So it's on LinkedIn. Dan is a guitarist, but he owns a guitar school. And during the pandemic, he was being very clever. He started doing a series of posts about professional people talking about being a guitarist. He just leveraged his network. I got onto him. I was like, this is so good. It's so good, all the stuff that he did. And it was drawing people in from a point of view of, I would have to go back. Just check him out online. But it was really engaging. And what he was doing was drawing people like on a professional network where if you're more likely to have money to spend because you're still on this professional network, most likely. And, you know, guitar, lucky for him, the guitar is a relatively easy instrument to pick up. And he was selling online classes because of COVID. And in this way, he can actually have a much wider reach. And he was generating interest by showing that he had a network that was global of professional guitar players. And he could do little chats with professional people, get insights, get people drawn in to what he was doing and saying, by the way, we're doing classes. And he was doing things like, you know, a free taster class online through Zoom, things like that. It was just very clever what he was doing. But yeah, there's all like Crash, obviously, I'm going to think is good. This is something I put up because I just saw it earlier. This is a collaboration, but Owen, I've just realized I've done something that I shouldn't have done. I need to share, but I didn't share my computer audio. So I'm going to do a really quick stop share, if you don't mind, and share again. I want to show you some audio. Sorry about this. Oh no, I did. Yeah, sorry, internet. Anyway, so I'll play this. This is Owen. So Owen is the percussionist in Crash Ensemble. He's based in the UK. He's completely nuts. But again, this is down to who you are as a performer and what works for you.
Hello everybody, it's Owen here from Children's Classic Concerts, just doing a little bit of spooky practice in preparation for the Halloween gig that's happening in a couple of weeks' time with the RSNO at the Caird Hall. Can't believe it's actually happening, 2 p.m. on the Saturday. Now, you can tune in online to watch the most prepared concert ever. Our last gig was back in March, so I've been working on the dance moves, the singing, all the bad jokes since then. What could possibly go wrong?
So this is just an example of a different type of person who's doing performance and stuff. Owen is hilarious, but he's a phenomenal percussionist. Like, he's amazing, but he's also very much a performative person and brilliant with kids. So he does, I guess, kids performances all over the world, or no, all over the UK certainly. So there's different styles, different approaches, but it's all about communicating. I hope I'm making a lot of sense here. I know you also spoke about social media, and for me, the biggest thing about it is, who are your audience? So it's another question to ask yourself. Who are you trying to speak to and where are they? Because most of these people they're on Facebook. I bloody hate Facebook, even though I know that's where most of my age group are. But are my age group who you want to be speaking to? Maybe not. And so there's no point in picking the wrong social network because it suits you, because then you're kind of speaking to the air. There's nobody there who you really want to speak to. So you have to make the choice of, well, if I want to speak to an audience, where are they? How can I get to them? And it's those kind of questions as well. Then you can build the content and all of that kind of stuff. And you definitely need some form of online content, because if people are looking you up, you know, everyone looks people up nowadays. If you don't have an online presence, it looks a bit shady. It looks a bit weird. You don't have to have loads, but some level of minimal stuff that you keep updated. It matters. And another thing that has come up, I don't know if you've spoken about this yet, is Patreon. Has that been covered at all? So it's a new, relatively new online platform, where now there's very much converging views on Patreon and whether it's good or not. But it's a tool that's built online to help musicians make regular income. So if you look at Rhiannon Giddens, you have a membership level. It's like a subscription model that gives you access to stuff. So videos, performances, stories and stuff. You know, some people would say it's really tough, when I've talked about this before, because you have to keep generating content to keep it alive, and that's a lot of work. But then if you make it work, and if you can get enough people signing up, it can work. But it's work. It is definitely work to get this working for you. But it has potential. It just depends on whether that makes sense to you or not. But it could, if it does work, like these guys have 430 patrons. So even if you work that out, let's work it out on my phone calculator right now. So even if the 430 patrons were only the 3 a month, so it's 430 by 3 by 12. So at the very least, they're getting 15.5 grand a year. At the very least, for what they're doing. So then you have to think about what's that worth in terms of, say, performance or stuff you might make. I mean, at the maximum, if they're really lucky, 24 by 4, 24 by 430 by 20. At the very most, if they're really lucky and everyone's on the max, they're making 123,840 euros a year. So I don't think they're doing that either. But it's going to be a mix. And you offer people these different price points because not everyone can afford these things, but some can. So at the very least, they're making 15 grand a year on this, which is no bad thing. So it's just something to consider. And there's no harm in trying and then deciding you don't like it and pulling back. That's okay too. People and networking. So some people would say networking is an evil word. And they didn't like it. I know my mother, when I went to university when I was younger, used to tell me to network. And I was like, oh, Mom, what are you saying? What a terrible thing to say. These are all my friends. And it's only now that I realize that I have friends who are barristers, friends who are doctors, friends who are engineers, all sorts of stuff. And it's kind of useful that you know these people. But again, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, it's about who you know and having the chats and being interested. And I think these are things that I would think of, like networking effectively is about being human and trying to connect on a human level with people. I know when I first started with Crash Ensemble, I was essentially new to the music scene in Ireland. And I knew one guy who was working in RTE in the symphony orchestra at the time. And I was at an event and he was the only person I knew. And I was like, oh, Gareth, I know nobody here. Can I stick with you? And he's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. And I just stuck with him and he introduced me to some people. I mean, I could have gone the other extreme and just walked up to people and said, hello, how are you? At the time, when I was like 26 or something, I was like 27. Oh, I'm not so sure about that. Now you should see me in a room of people I don't know, but I know they're full of business people who might be potential clients. I'm chatting to everybody because I don't mind, because I like talking to people. And I'm not just bombarding people. I'm still trying to connect with people because I like people. I like having the chats. Having the chats, I guess, is a very Irish phrase. It's just having a good conversation with people. And I think networking is about what you put into it, very much so, and not what you try to get out of it. So you start by putting into your network and being generous into it. And from what you put into it is what you get out of it. It's transactional to a certain extent, but you got to be generous up front and give to get. And that thing that there's a person at the end of every transaction matters in everything that you do, even in what I do, because I could, you know, be selling the most wonderful product in the world, but it's still a person at the other end who has to make that buying decision or engagement decision. And you have to connect with that person. It's still a person. It's not a robot. It's a person. And that's something that I mean, you can see a lot of coverage on it. Things that come across quite robotic or too logical, too many engineers. I'm an engineer, so I can say it. There's too many engineers controlling these social media platforms when it's more about human and humanity and connecting with people. It's what will really deliver success. It's slower, but it's more successful. Yeah, so network in times of COVID, it is obviously harder. And for all businesses, like our business is huge on personal contact. We're really good when we get into a room with people and converting that into business, because we work with clients for 5, 10, 20 years because the relationships matter, you know, and that's what you're looking for, long relationships that give solidity and support to your career. There's a good article here by Kingsley Aikens. I can send on this presentation anyway. Kingsley Aikens is a really good guy. I'll click on the link just so you can see. It comes up funny when I click on it. One sec. Yeah, networking in a time of social distance. So he's a very experienced guy. He used to run the Ireland Funds, which is a big philanthropic thing, and he specializes in networking. But he's got some good thoughts on it, so it's worth looking at it. Cool. Let me go back. And then research. So research is hugely important in terms of what you're trying to do and who you're trying to get through to. I stalk people all the time online, even pre-COVID, and you'd be surprised how much people have about themselves online, because it's hilarious. My company think it's hilarious how much I can find out really quickly on people. They mention a name to me and they're like, will you look that person up? And they've asked me and I know already because I just put their name in and I found stuff, you know. But learn as much as you can, like in relation to, you know, Sorry, bring up the chatting. Yeah, I'll send URLs for everything, don't worry. Research is hugely important. So this is down to, you know, sometimes you're looking from a performative perspective, you want to get gigs, you want to go to venues, but make sure the venues you're choosing are ones that make sense for who you are as an artist, one, not just because of prestige. Not everyone needs to perform in Carnegie Hall or La Scala or something like that. You know, what makes sense for you? Where are your audience going? That's really key. So you need to understand that, right? You need to understand who is the programmer, who is the gatekeeper, and who are the many gatekeepers who might be in your way to getting this conversation going. And I would always say that the artist sells best. In my experience, when I was managing Crash Ensemble, I would often be talking to people, but they only really wanted to talk to Donica, who was the artistic director at the time when I was there. And I'd be a little bit hurt going, do you not want to talk to me? But they wanted to have a creative conversation. So often people in creative directorship roles or, you know, programming roles, they're doing it for the love of interaction with creatives, not with like management people like me. So it's those things that make them excited. So you need to get to that person, but you also need to understand what they like before you meet them, so that you're not going at someone who, okay, let's pick La Scala, for instance. I don't have that much knowledge on La Scala. I'm trying to keep it European here. But you wouldn't go to La Scala with, you know, My Fair Lady, I'm assuming. I don't think it would go down too well. Or a groundbreaking breakdancing, electronics, trip hop, hip hop extravaganza. No. So you need to find the right place. So this is where the research really matters. And you, again, research online can show you so much in terms of who people are and what they like. Be surprised how much you can find. Then does it make sense for you to talk to them? Then how do you get to them? So getting to them, first thing you do is try and find a personal link. Who in your network? Do you know the person? If you don't know the person, do you know someone who knows that person? Is there an introduction that can be made to get you to that person? Because that's always best. You want to get as many warm recommendations as you can, or help from your network to get to these people. If you're doing that, you really need to know, I know if I get to this person, I can make something amazing happen. So that's the drive you need to do to get to it. And you know, the other side of it, they're always looking for one artistic vision, something to get them excited, and something that will make them money. So that's why you also need to understand their audiences and understand and put it in the context of bums on seats, because bums on seats matter. You know what I mean by bums on seats. That's also, I feel, quite Irish, but yeah, you know, it's pretty universal as a requirement in a venue. So that is just all on research and preparation. Hugely important. It just gives you so much power when you're talking to people. And yeah, in the beginning, maybe you feel a little stalkery, but all you're trying to do is be professional about what you're doing. So you're researching and putting the work in. And then when you get to those people, they know you've put the work in. And that stands out, because you'd be surprised how little work people put into things. And if you put the work in, it shows. And it gives confidence in you as a professional to be able to deliver. Because again, everything you do in these interactions is about building trust and confidence that you're the right person. Makes sense? So the last thing I'm going to talk about, and then I'll throw it open to questions and debate, and you can tell me how wrong I am about everything, which is fine. Professionalism. And I was delighted to see everyone turning up very smart today to the call. And again, this is the thing, because I'm going to show you a video as well. It's about, again, tied to who you are. Some of these recommendations, I'm like, oh, that's so not me. But it's just worth looking at them. So how you look does matter. Let's be real. Again, it's down to people. It does matter. And it matters to who you're talking to. You know, how you communicate matters. You know, your emails should be professional. Some young pups out there are disastrous on emails. Oh my goodness. I'm like, have you not learned how to write and communicate effectively? No, they'll write with emojis and like badly spelt words. It's horrendous. You know, don't do that. I don't think any of you would do that, but it is a challenge. How you deliver performances, clearly not a problem. How you prepare, always important. Yeah, and with online chats as well. So when you're doing things like this, I mean, it mattered. I took time to figure out what I was going to look like today and how my room was going to look. for this talk, because these things do matter. Some of you have lovely homes. I'm seeing Carla Conti, your books are lovely. So just, I thought I'd say that. But this is someone I subscribe to, and she sends weekly emails, and they're just very interesting. She's written actually a really nice book on working mothers, which is worth checking out as well, Christine Armstrong. But just this morning, she sent something on, you know, how to have more impact on Zoom and web calls, and it's about how you look. So I thought, for the sake of mixing it up and not having just me talk, I'm going to put on this short video so you can see what she's saying, and she has some specialists in on it. So let's go to this now, and please let me know if you can't hear it.
The question I get asked a huge amount at the moment is, how can I have more impact on Zoom or other web calls? And I've been giving this a bit of thought, because lots of people are telling me that they're struggling to get seen and heard and make an impact, and that as a result they're being railroaded by louder, more assertive voices on calls and feeling that they're actually sinking backwards. So I wanted to explore this from two different perspectives. The first is your space. What do people see when you come onto a Teams or Zoom or other platform? We had a chat in the summer, you may remember, with Alex Sujong Kim Pang, and I'd suggest you look at that, about all the technical aspects of that. So the height of your camera and your connection and sound, and those things are really important. But also what's important is your setting. What are you trying to say to people about who you are when they just make that split-second decision before you even say one word about who you are and whether they should listen to you? And I think it's worth taking a bit of time out this weekend or next just to think about what you want your space to communicate. Do you want something white and neutral? Do you want something that looks very creative, very dramatic? What kind of job are you working in, or what kind of role are you projecting? The next thing is to create that space, and this might look quite fancy. I mean, honestly, we've commandeered one of our kids' rooms. I had to persuade my husband to repaint it from a very dodgy blue that you'll see in a moment. And we've put together a few bits, you know, and Billy from IKEA, which we've had for years, a set of drawers, which I think possibly my mother-in-law gave us, which have been sitting around the house, and some bits and pieces just to give it a little bit of a sense that this is our home and this is a home office. It's not a very corporate space, but, you know, a little bit of thought has been given to it. One of the things I'd urge you to give a bit of consideration to is the space behind you, which is something actually I've learned from this vlog process, is that having some depth in the shot just looks so much better than if, for example, you have which a lot of people do, a sort of a face to a wall behind you. And at its extreme, it can kind of look quite hostage taker. You know, it's quite threatening. I think Alex said this in the summer, but, you know, if it's too close, you don't get the right vibe at all. But a bit of space behind you can look great. And I've seen people do this with tons of space behind them, and it can look really, really amazing. So, I mean, obviously you have to think about all the practical things. You might be working from your kitchen table and have to pack away every night, or working from, you know, a spare room, one of the kids' rooms or whatever. Just bear in mind the practicalities of it, but spend the time moving your screen around. Every time I do a Zoom interview, pretty much, I have to start by saying, maybe take the dressing gowns off the door. Could we move those papers away? You know, perhaps you could just turn yourself into the lights. And it is worth spending a bit of time on. The other bit that's worth thinking about is, what are we saying about ourselves when we jump onto these calls? And Ilka Dunn is a brand stylist and an expert in what we say about ourselves before we open our mouths. And I wanted to have a chat with her about how we could just lift our perceived authority just before we jump onto a call, even if we've only got a few minutes. I also persuaded Adam, our editor, to be a guinea pig, and so we could see the male and the female version of what Ilka thinks about. Have a look.
Okay, that I like. The weird thing about my job is it's so shallow, and on the other hand, it's so important. The jacket color relates to your eyebrow color and your hair color. But we have a bit of tension. And tension is something that I also want to get from you. For everybody, that a different aspect of styling is important. For some people, it's color, and that kind of all that matters, bright color or black. For other people, it's the style. I think your style is really important on you. A little bit more maybe than the color. So I'd rather lose on the color a little bit than on the style. Okay, much better. Now you have some swagger. The higher you button a shirt up, the more you lose individuality and creativity, and you start looking more younger, you start looking like a boy, and there's something like a choir boy in there. When you get that looseness, you look less like you want to conform, like you want to be the good boy. What's great about this outfit, it's easy. It takes you exactly a minute to put this on.
Could you explain the mechanics or psychology or like meta behind this? this like, what, 3-inch?
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, it looks more relaxed, more like this is your shirt, you're relaxed in your own space, you feel good in your own body, in your own skin. It gives that air of age, and age is then experience. I always say this to my female clients. It's less a problem for men, usually, but some men do look young and struggle with that. It's more women that either look too young, and we need to make them look older so that people take them seriously, or women of the age of 40 and above who starts trying to look younger. And I'm saying, that's no good. You will never look younger. Let's work with the experience that you convey. That has real gravitas. And so you're getting there right now. You have more presence. You have more gravitas in this shirt than you have when you button it all up and you go back to be looking younger. We don't need to stress you being young. I like that whole darker image, and you look so much more experienced. There's a bit of that business-like element because it's your blazer, but it's loose. It looks like it's worn, so it has credibility. It's not newly bought. Everything that we wear has to have a relation to how we look, basically our face, our hair, and you have vivid hair. If you had very slick, straight hair, you would want to wear something that has the resemblance, same surface structure in your clothing, but you need more structure because it's the same on your hair. Great thing about knowing what works for you is that you need very little. So I think for you, it's enough, especially for your Zoom calls, and men get away with less anyway, is to have that as an outfit and different versions of it.
Ilka, so I've got a call with a law firm, say, in like 5 minutes. What kind of thoughts would you have about how to have a bit of authority?
5 minutes doesn't give you much time and you don't want to stress, so play it safe. Work with what you already wear, but make the contrast really high. You're not standing for much right now. I don't know who you are. Now I'd say put on a red jacket. Great. Fantastic. It's already pulled together a lot, but I would add a little bit more codes of authority, as I call them. So added necklace, silver or red. I think you can do either. Perfect. It adds even more contrast. And yes, the lipstick would have been the next point I would have raised, because it facilitates communication, and especially when the sound isn't ideal, it helps a lot to read the lips as well. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I really love the red earrings.
It's a little bit more bohemian than a law firm, but could throw a scarf into it as well.
If you were really meeting somebody in an office, I'd say definitely add that. It pulls it even more together. You look very dressed up now. Normally, if you were talking to somebody, visiting somebody, I would also say wear a belt. You know, that pulls it together again. But now that's one of the accessories that is not so important anymore. Like the shoes, you can wear house shoes at the moment. Nobody will notice.
If I were doing something more fun, maybe an ad agency I was speaking to, or a branding agency, where would your mind go for that?
So you can decide if it's very casual business, then you can stay that way. If you want a little bit more authority, then I would definitely wear a jacket. Oh, fantastic. Look, what works really well together is the collar of the shirt and the jacket.
What about a government office where I maybe want to look a bit friendlier and a little bit less corporate, perhaps?
Another pattern shirt, then I would say nothing monochrome. If you have a lovely friendly print, like a heart print, yeah, I think that fits the bill, because you want to be approachable and friendly, but you're also having proper blazer. And you can make it now even friendly if you wear your red blazer with that. Now, this is immediately more feminine, but I like it a lot, especially when you put the collar up. I think if you put the collar down, you see more of the dress, so you can play with that as well. You look more normal.
Maybe that looks more formal down, whereas more informal.
What I love about what Ilka did for Adam was that I had to jump into that call a couple of times, and every time I did so, Adam seemed a little bit more authoritative, a little bit more confident, a bit taller even, and it was really lovely to see that process in real time. And for any of you who kind of bristle at this stuff and think, do you know what, Christine, piss off, I'll turn up in my joggers if I want to. That's fine. I'm not imposing this on anyone. This is just for anyone who feels they want to have a bit more impact. And I encourage you to experiment, see if it makes a difference for you, and let me know how you get on. See you next week.
So there you go. And I would agree with Christine on that. This is just something interesting. A lot of that stuff, you can tell I am not wearing a blazer right now. And it is also harder for women a lot of the times in terms of looks and feel on these communications. But At the same time, when I was not in Zoom land and going to work, luckily I work in a creative agency, so I don't have to be suited and booted all of the time. But depending on the clients who are coming into the studio, I would dress appropriately. You know, some people work in law firms. Puke. They have to wear horrible dark suits all the time. But one last, I guess, word I would say is fake it till you make it. So there's certain things here in terms of presenting yourselves and putting yourselves out there and pushing yourselves on a different direction. Fake it till you make it is very useful. You know, and I guess there's probably a lot of things, maybe even Paul touched on it the other talk, but you know, building self-confidence even through repetition of things. I used to say to a friend, you know, write it on your mirror and every morning say, I am freaking amazing. Say it yourself 3 times. I am freaking amazing. Of course, I didn't say freaking. I'm trying not to curse on this call. But that's what she said. And I was like, just do it. You're not doing it in front of everybody. Just do it and build it up. And then you get to a point where you're like saying, I'm amazing. I do that. I mean, I did the same myself. Now I'll freely say I'm amazing. And I'm not really being that ironic or anyway, messy about it. But that is, I guess, a lot of information, different information. Hopefully it made sense in the context of what we're trying to do. Hopefully it was interesting on a Friday afternoon. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. I will, of course, send the presentation and all the links through to Vorneen and the organisers. But at the very least, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Frances. That was great and really, really enjoyable. We've got some great tips there. And I'm really interested, and I think it's important everything you brought up there, because I think as musicians sometimes we don't think about this and how we present ourselves. So I'm just wondering, would anyone like to ask Frances anything, or does anyone have any observations regarding presentation and the networking and all of what Frances talked about? You've talked about so much. Trying to even go back to the beginning, half an hour ago.
I know.
Would anyone like to ask anything? Or does anyone have any observations?
It's okay if you don't. I mean, I've just pulled this together because it's been a while since I've worked directly in the music industry. So I'm always self-conscious when I'm speaking to music industry people because I'm not in it. But I guess I've worked in it. I know it well. And ultimately, this talk is all about people and professionalism. Really. And I don't know where everybody is in their stage of their journey. Everyone is different. Not all of this applies. I would hope that you would just take from this what makes sense to you and throw out the rest. Absolutely. Because, you know, some of this stuff doesn't even make sense for me, but it makes sense for some people. And given the broad range of people who are here today, certain things will resonate with some people and certain things will resonate with others. Carla, do you have a...
Yeah, it's so surprising that, you know, we jumped from the last section about, you know, listen and hearing, you know, something inside, to this really, you know, very impact, you know, session that you proposed. Thank you so much, because we realize sometimes that musician is like, not, I don't want to say blind people, but people who really forget about all these aspects, you know. And thank you so much also for your sincere, you know, word that you choose, that you say stalk, you know, go and do your, you know, do your job. And this is very important, because sometimes, I think the most of the times, you know, musicians, they are in a kind of, I don't want to say that they are not creative, that we are not creative, but in always we say a kind of you know, all together to go and to think the same thing, and not to break the position, like artists, you know, like we always, you know, we always think that our images, you know, are less important than our performance. But it's not
Yeah.
like this. But now in the social media, you know, world is not like this. And you are right.
Yeah, and there's something that actually Donncha said. So Donncha Dennehy, the composer, was my artistic director for many years, and I always remember him saying to me that the top performers are not the best performers. The top performers are really good performers who are excellent salespeople. You all know people who are better than the big names in terms of performance and heart and interpretation and all of that. You all know. I'm sure you're all that anyway. But the people who get to the top in terms of performative access and concert runs and everything like that put themselves out there and present themselves as a product.
Yeah.
You know, and you know it, you see it, you can pull many examples of it. I mean, they have all got a certain level of talent, clearly, but think about it. And it's the hard thing as well, because I know from working with lots of musicians, you just want to be making great music. You know, all you want to do is like, if someone could just pay me and I could just play with all the people I love and make great music, life would be amazing. And it would be amazing, but unfortunately, it's not the way the world works commercially. So that dirty word of money, but it matters. So, you know, making those changes. If you want to do a concert run, you need to be able to be pointed to online, say, this person's coming to see us. Look at what they're like. Look at what they can do. They're amazing, you know?
Yeah. The beauty that we can attract same kind of people that we look, something like this, you know, that we can match the same, you know, audience in a certain way.
Yeah. Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm not sure my question is going to be so articulated, but I'll go for it anyway. And it's kind of picking up on what Carla's speaking about in terms of also letting your work speak for itself, but then the necessity to network. And I just wondered if you would be able to speak about networking in different contexts. I'm not sure if Francis is. Oh yeah, you're back. Sorry, like frozen on my screen. Yeah, networking in different contexts. And do you almost like effectively code switch, and then how do you reconcile that with authenticity, if there's a question in there?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Because yeah, you do. Like if you're talking to a bunch of musicians about creating something, it's different to when you're talking to a promoter. So there's different approaches from how you look to your language that you use and the topics that you cover. So absolutely it changes, and you do have to shift persona sometimes, you know. And I talked with one of my wonderful musician friends, we talked about it as putting on coats. So, you know, I think most people, I mean, a lot of people would see me as an extrovert, but I'm an introvert extrovert. I mean, I put on the coat of presenter to a bunch of music educators at 2 o'clock on a Friday, or I put on the coat of mega saleswoman to big multinational companies, but I'll also put on the coat of performer and mom and whatever. And it's being able to maybe think that way and say, I just need to be this way. It's still authentic. It's still part of who I am. And I actually love when I put the coat on sometimes, but I love to take it off as well. And I would still feel that I'm authentic in what I'm doing, because at my core, I believe in what I'm doing. So
great, thank you. Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Anybody else? Well, you can feel free to, if you're on LinkedIn, I'm probably most prolific on LinkedIn in terms of things that I do. So happy to connect with you there. But if you have any questions afterwards, I'll be happy to respond. There's no problems.
Thanks, Francis. Francis, did you write the link to that?
Oh, do you want me to?
Yeah, that would be great. The URL to that article on the networking. I think Yanis was interested.
There you go.
Thank you very much. And I think it's nice from a teaching perspective as well, the networking. I often say when I was delivering career strategy lectures in the academy, that the people sitting beside you, you know, are the people in their first year that you meet on the first day. That might be the person that is on an audition panel looking at you playing and presenting yourself. So kind of be nice to people on the way up. But it's a real part of our business, I think, that element of having good manners and presenting yourself in a certain way from as early as possible, really. And I think especially for younger people and our students, if we can encourage them to present themselves in a professional way on social media also, because we all know of stories where employers do go stalking of their employees. Our funders now, if you're applying for an Arts Council funding grant, they will look up at what you're doing online. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well when looking at being professional, and maybe having a professional page as well as a personal page could be a good idea. What do you think of that, Francis? Sorry, I know this is the very end.
Gotcha. No. I mean, I look up everybody I come across. So, and I have someone I know when she was young, and she went to Amsterdam and went to one of the sex museums and thought it was hilarious to take a picture of her head next to this plate covered in penises. Up as her profile picture. And I was like, you're looking for jobs right now. People will look you up. It's a bad move, you know. But, you know, and people, they don't think necessarily, and young people would definitely make mistakes in that. I mean, you'd hope to a certain extent you could be forgiving of youthful silliness, but ultimately when they're in college, they need to be thinking about being professional. So I think a professional page, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want to be messing with your friends, just give yourself a pseudonym and do it that way.
Exactly. And I think especially as musicians, I say from the very first day of college, they're a professional really. So it's kind of a bit different as well than maybe another subject where you can get away with it. You're in a class of 80 or 100 people, whereas in music college, you're really an individual, and how people see you in that light can carry through your whole career. It's very hard to change someone's mind about you. So yeah, that's my comment on the whole thing. But listen, thank you so much, Francis. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to everyone for a wonderful week. I don't know if anyone else from the News and Map team wants to say goodbye, or if
thank you so much, Vernine, for this really interesting, you know, day that you supervisor, we can say, and thank you for all of you attending this. So you know, we can say in a certain way also stressing way, but maybe we don't know. Maybe we can see and we can meet for other, you know, for other events, for other you know, activities concerning News in Map in the future 2 years, because this is just the first year of our project, so we have still 2 years. Bye.
Great, thank you, Carla, and thanks everyone. Thanks to Francis, that was a wonderful session. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you.
Enjoy your Halloween.
Bye. You too. Bye bye.